it. Just don't touch
Why
it.
would you let me?
Just don't touch it. Just don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. We're live.
So controlling.
It's a podcast. It's serious business. It's Mind Your Banners post game.
Mind your banners.
Mind your 56-6.
Yes.
mind. We probably should change the name of the podcast at a certain point because it really is about football now. I don't know what that is, but this is Mind Your Banners live.
It's like in my face.
We're 27 seconds in.
Everybody else see this thing in the bottom right corner? Comment and let us know.
Okay, we're in 31 seconds in.
I would like.
We need to start. This is Mind Your Banners post game.
You
Indiana
say that
56
in your face.
Well, it makes your face look better. It makes the video better. Shots fired. I mean, like, I don't know if you can describe a 50-point win as casually dominant, but that's what this felt like. Like, this was, I mean, defensively, certainly Indiana back to its best after maybe some, I mean, I wouldn't even go like crazy with the Michigan State win, but obviously, but there were moments defensively where they looked a little bit shaky. The offense was just very nondescript and still finished with 475 yards. Indiana scored 56 points. Indiana has now won multiple conference games by 50 plus. I mean, you do start to run out of ways to describe how good this team is.
Yeah. Well, I think you got to talk about it in the context of what UCLA was doing. We talked about this maybe being the toughest game on the schedule left just because how well they're playing. What they have left is not very impressive in terms of kind of no team had momentum really that they have left on the schedule. I mean, you talk about Purdue, Wisconsin, Penn State, Maryland's probably the next best, but like this team came in, they were averaging, 233 yards on the ground, 33 points with Jerry Newhouse as offensive coordinator with this new staff. They've won 3 in a row. And Tyreek Tucker comes up with a sack on the first play, pick 6 on the second play. And it was like, man, if IU scores here pretty quick, I forgot my mic.
Some people say the podcast might be better.
If IU scores here pretty quick, man, this could get late in a hurry, and it did. And, you talked about the offense not playing its best. Fernando Mendoza, particularly in the first half, threw an interception, was off target on a couple of throws, which just stands out because that's not been the case all season. Kurt Signay talked after the game that the receivers struggled with their press coverage. So they had to go away with go away from stuff that they had sort of planned. And then UCLA threw some looks at him. I don't think you were in the scrum with Mendoza. Mendoza talked about they were throwing looks at him they hadn't practiced and hadn't seen before. So
I thought you could tell that, especially like the press coverage on the outside.
Yeah.
Like the receivers were struggling to
you should probably come in a little bit. Yeah.
The receivers were struggling to create space.
Well, I guess they were doubling both Cooper and Surratt, which kind of surprised them, and that's maybe part of why EJ Williams had a big game. But anyway, it just felt like, man, this team isn't even playing great on offense, and the game was over by halftime. Over. I think they could have put their backups in at the half.
They probably still scored a couple more touchdowns.
And they the offense came out, scored right out of halftime because again they won the middle 8, and that was sort of felt like, man, they scored on the front end of halftime and the back end, and it was like that's it, this is over. But it felt like it was more sooner than that, and it's another 50-point win. I think we talked about maybe fifth in the 21 games that Kurt Signetti has been coach.
Yeah,
3 in the Big Ten. I mean,
which is just I mean, like to get philosophical, and then we can talk about some specifics from this game. If you are Indiana right now, it's clear what like the job is. The job is to try and win a national championship. That is what this team has proven it's capable of: a Big Ten championship and then a national championship. If you are looking at Indiana as an opponent, as a potential opponent, whether it's a Penn State or, a Maryland, or it's even someone like Ohio State, who maybe is doing a little bit of advanced scouting, thinking if we get to Indy, let's go ahead and have a foundation laid. When you watch a game like this, you are not expecting to see Indiana struggle, but you are maybe looking for holes. You're looking for weaknesses. So for example, you're looking at, well, maybe press coverage is a problem. But then Indiana answers that by saying, well, our number 3 wide receiver can go for 5, 109 and 2 scores. You're looking at it and saying, well, what happens if Indiana loses a couple of important players? What happens if Indiana loses Aiden Fisher? Well, Isaiah Jones steps in, defense doesn't miss a beat. And by the way, for anyone who didn't see, Signetti continued to kind of talk about that as precautionary afterward. He said we'll get all the scans done, but he didn't seem overly worried today. Of course, we'll see what the the actual medical checkup shows with Aiden Fisher's knee.
I think we figured out without anybody commenting. They are the comments showing up in the bottom corner.
There you go.
Okay, well, they're interesting.
See, now that's good for.
Well, it depends what the comments are, I suppose.
That's true. on
Roll-
on the phone,
roll the dice.
we're doing this on the phone, so we can't see them.
We can't read them, but I mean, could get dicey.
But no, you're looking for holes, you're looking for weaknesses, and I mean, I guess you can talk again about the press coverage, but it just felt like today was another day that emphasized the idea that if you're going to beat this team, and UCLA was probably never going to beat this team, but I'm talking about Penn State, I'm talking about Ohio State, I'm talking about
I do not think we should group those in the same category, but continue.
Yeah, well, Penn State at Penn State is still going to be difficult. She says don't get negative on the episode. If you're talking about them in the playoff,
he has them in a game. He has them in a fight against Penn State. He's the one being negative.
Can you stop interrupting me while I'm interrupting you?
Clarify.
Thank you. It continues to reinforce the idea that if you beat Indiana, you're going to beat them on your merits. Like this team does not.
Oh, they were seeing darkness. What you were originally going to write about was that the only thing that feels like it could derail this team is injuries.
That's what I'm going to write about.
Okay, you said Isaiah Jones, but that was
no,
it was in the concept. Bones Jones.
Bones Jones.
But because they survived Fisher, and I think they could survive Fisher. Kamara got banged up at one point and came out. But I mean, there's a point at which this team does not have the depth that Ohio State does. And this team can't survive sort of an onslaught of season-ending injuries. I mean, Kellen Wyatt went down last week, obviously missed the game, wasn't listed as out for the season yet. But Kurt Signetti said kind of even late in the week on his radio show that it was very doubtful that he'd be back. If Fisher's is anything serious, you're just talking about those adding up real quick for a team that did have depth concerns at the start. And Isaiah Jones was sort of a luxury at the start. And now he becomes an integral part, and you can't survive a second injury at linebacker. You know what I'm saying? These are positions. The defensive end's another one. If Kamara were to go down for long term, I mean, man, those defensive ends, you just don't have enough bodies there that were able to get kind of playing time because you were, aren't able to add sort of all the transfers at every spot every year. So, like you said, you look for weaknesses. There aren't any currently, and it really only feels like if they have a bad run of luck. That's the only thing that would take this team out of the running for at least getting the Big Ten title game. Even still, they might get there, I think, because of just what they'll be favored. I mean, they'll be double-digit favorites, maybe except Penn State. Maybe
I think even Penn State, they'll probably.
But because of the road environment, maybe it's a little closer.
Maybe.
But
I bet they're still a double-digit favorite.
But I mean, what derails this team other than that? Because like we said, Mendoza doesn't play as great, and they win by 50. The offense. 475 yards. Did it feel like that? Did it feel like that? They kind of had that kind of production.
No, it was. I mean, it was stunted, but there were big plays. I mean, and that was, and again, talk about adjusting. Mendoza, for example. I mean, he didn't. Let's not go crazy with it, but he had 5 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. And I think that was because he recognized fairly early in the game, we're going to have to win this with some scramble drill. We're not really dealing with the press coverage well enough. I don't think it's. Listen, there's an extent to which quarterbacks just thrown to the open man. But I don't think it's by accident that he recognizes, or someone, whether it's him, Mike Shanahan, Chandler Whitmer, Kurt Signetti, recognizes they're doubling your 2 main guys. Go look for number 7. Go look for EJ. We just go on to number 3.
We talked about decision making. It's making the right decision, not forcing it to flat when there's double coverage. He's finding EJ Williams consistently, and that's not all the coaches that. He has to make those decisions right. Earlier in the year, I think he was trying to force it at times, or there'd be a ball where you kind of see it, possibly could be intercepted. But even here today, the bad throws wasn't bad decision making, and you can have an off night, but it's really impressive that they're able to do this. We've seen 2 weeks in a row where Michigan State was kind of the defense sort of having lapses and not being on point. This week it was. I really did feel like the offense didn't Kirsten talked about. He mentioned the press coverage multiple times. He wasn't happy about it in terms of kind of what they couldn't get going in the passing game, and like the defense was, I'll just keep saying, like I think the defense. I said, can we give the defense the Heisman? Because I really think nothing against what Fernando Mendoza is doing, but like I mean, Nico was awful, and that wasn't just
You're not
because
trying to say his last name.
no. He
Iamaleava.
doesn't even deserve it today.
Iamaleava.
And 13 to 27, 113 yards, 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
Had 7 carries for 28 yards.
And I mean, like three sacks does not do justice to how the pressure that
And he was so boxed in because he's a mobile guy, right? He can get loose.
That's the only reason he only had 3 sacks was because he could move around.
The pocket was so collapsed, he really didn't have anywhere to go. Even because like they were getting pressure up the middle, like almost immediately after the snap. The edges were doing their job.
I'll say this:
really impressive.
Like we're sitting here and talking, and again, this is a measure of where Indiana is as a team right now. We're sitting here and talking about this like it's not a vintage day for the offense, and it's not. They had 27 first downs, and they were 14 of 18 on 3rd and 4th downs. Like I don't care what you think about what your eyes told you about this offensive performance. 14 of 18 on 3rd and 4th downs with 27 first downs. That is an insane level of efficiency. I mean, that's, and obviously, well, you look at that and you say, well, yeah, of course. I mean, they had 56 points. Surely they had to have all that success. Sure, I get that. But like,
and they also
talking about an off day where your quarterback throws for 3 touchdowns.
And they also turned it over twice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, and they still scored 56 points. Probably hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's yes. I mean, and I agree with you about the defense. This is now, 6 defensive touchdowns allowed in 8 games, only 4 defensive touchdowns allowed in the last, basically, I mean, I say 4 in the last 7 because it's important to remember that the only game where they've allowed multiple touchdowns,
offensive touchdowns,
by the other team's offense, was the first week of the season against Old Dominion. Yeah, it is. I mean, that Old Dominion.
This is the 3rd game they haven't allowed one touchdown at all this season, and they were talking about how Isaiah Jones was like bummed we didn't get the shutout. Like I think.
What did he say? Coach Sig doesn't want to see smiles on the sideline.
It doesn't want to see smiles. I mean, it's just it's incredible. I mean, UCLA averaged 3.8 yards per play. That was the lowest all season. They hadn't they hadn't done under 4 all season, but it was it's by far their lowest per season. They had more penalties than first downs at halftime, and almost more penalty yards than total yards at halftime. 8 for 83 at the end of the game. It's hard. It was hard to find fault with what the defense did today. And at no point, I mean, kept mentioning that why is Nico out there? Was it punishment for not performing? He had to finish this game.
Yeah,
and like
that was weird.
Even the second team defense was like, no.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. All right. I mean, let's. We've talked enough about this game. I mean, at the end of the day, I get it, but they won by 50. Do you think that they deserve to be number 1 over Ohio State?
No.
You don't.
Nothing's changed. I don't believe in
well, let me put it this way. I'm not talking about like should they, because Ohio State's got a bye this week. I suspect they might grab a few first place spots.
They had 6 last week.
I'm not saying. Let me rephrase that. I'm not saying. Do you think the voters should switch 1 and 2? Do you think they are more deserving of the concept of number 1 in the country right now than Ohio State with the way they're playing, the wins they have?
No, because I mean, if you're the defending champion, I think you deserve
that's fair.
The equity that you earned.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And
I tell you what though, these last 2 weeks, and it's been because of the nature of these performances. We're sitting here, we're talking about. Well, they didn't play well on defense against Michigan State, and they won by 25. They didn't play well on offense against UCLA, and they won by 50.
Because I will point out
the gap in my mind between these teams is shrinking.
Ohio State has only allowed 4 touchdowns this season, so I mean, Ohio State's pretty good. And like, if this was a win over another top 10 team, like if this was,
UCLA was 3-0.
They were undefeated. But my point is like, I do think Indiana's resume might be more impressive than Ohio State's right now because they have that Oregon win, they have a win at Iowa, and obviously they both played Illinois. But so I think if they had something else like that on their resume, that would be. I think they might have been able to leap them. But if everything's equal from here on out and both teams went out, I just don't see a scenario where that'd be all that deserving. Just because I do. I think Ohio State sort of earned that number 1 spot. They've done everything they needed to do. I mean, maybe their offense hasn't looked as great, but I mean their defense, like I said, is in that same category. I mean, these defenses are. I mean, they made 1 and 2 in the country.
I mean, if anything, it's. I mean, yes. First of all, I agree. I think these are the 2 best defenses in the country. Second of all, if anything, I think you might have more questions about Ohio State's offense than Indiana's offense because saying is younger because like they just, I mean, and this isn't Ohio State's fault. They just haven't really been challenged. You know,
Well,
like
that's the interesting part, right?
they
These
played
teams,
Texas.
if these teams face each other, they'll face each other on neutral field,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and there's probably going to be a lot of Indiana fans, and so
Yeah.
you know, it's not going to be like our trip to Lucas Oil a couple years ago, and so that's a neutralizing thing, and that could be interesting, like in terms of like you know. Look, they played Ohio State last year at Ohio State. That was they were you know not great. If that game was in Indiana, would have looked more close. You know, would have been a closer game. I think so.
And I think this Indiana team is better than last year.
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah.
you know, as long as they stay healthy, I think as good as Indiana was last year, I think this team is better. I think this team is capable of more. I think, for example, if Curtis Rourke has a game like this, and this is no knock on Rourke, but if Curtis Rourke has a game like this, like what Fernando Mendoza had today, I don't think Indiana last year is capable of beating a team by 50 points, like a Big Ten team.
I
by
don't
50.
know. I could probably see that.
I think that the run game is. The
I think
difference for me.
Curtis Rourke could have almost kneeled every down against Purdue, and they still would have won by 50.
I think statistically that's difficult. If he,
James Carpenter could have faked all those punts.
well, yes, but that's different. That's
No, yeah, no. I get what you're saying, but yes, this team has. It seems like this team's ceiling higher as well, and Mendoza has even. You know, Kurt's gonna keeps talking about. He's like asked every week, like, how good is Fernando Mendoza? And he's like, well, he's not as good as he can be. Like, we can see him even getting better and doing better, and so, and that's I think where you kind of look at this team and be like, they're very dangerous because of that. Because as good as the defense playing, and if Mendoza can even get to a higher point, like, how do you beat this team?
yeah. No, and I think, and I mean, to your point, we're also at a place where it is difficult. I mean, you never say never in college football. I understand that, but we're also at a place where it's difficult to imagine this team getting genuinely challenged between here and the end of the season, in no small part because the superpower of this group is we don't lose focus. You know,
Unlike Zach Osterman, who's watching
there's-
Liverpool,
there's no-
really watching his
there's
screen.
no there's no letdown. There's no, I mean, like Signetti keeps putting trap game in quotes. I think it's because
He doesn't believe in him.
certainly
Not in existence.
not with this team. And I mean, like, you know, the Michigan State was supposed to be, hey, coming down off the Oregon win, feeling good about
You thought
themselves,
Michigan-
whatever.
I thought UCLA would put up more of a fight or be more capable offensively,
You did say this would be the most difficult game left on the schedule.
and I think that might be.
And
the
they
case.
and it was earlier, in fairness, it started earlier than Michigan State, so everyone had to get out of bed earlier, so maybe they were tired. That is
I mean, that is true.
that is about as much
I-
difficulty as one might find
Would you
from
think?
this game.
Do you think the interim coach was it Tim Skipper?
Tim Skipper.
Got up and said like this was 9 a.m. It was a little too early.
They were out at the lake. I heard they were out at the Four Winds. That's where a lot of teams
Okay.
stay. So
So do you think they were swimming? there this morning?
it's a little cold. It's a little cold.
Do they have an indoor pool?
I don't think they have
Okay.
their pool at Four Winds.
Either way.
maybe they were on boats. They were doing boats yesterday. Any other business? We'll talk about this more obviously during the week, but we've got a lot of ground to cover tonight, and we've got to reconvene
my face.
as we got to reconvene tomorrow for IU Baylor up in Indianapolis.
Oh man, yeah.
Is that a dry run for December 6th? Is this like
I mean, it's
is
close.
this our rehearsal?
Right, that's
Like the
close.
football tonight and basketball tomorrow morning, basketball in like 18 hours. A dry run for
It's just downstairs.
but seriously, any other business?
Alberto played.
Alberto Mendoza did play. Fernando Mendoza is very excited.
I want to see Kobe Martin before garbage time.
I mean, I just don't think you can make that an argument for that when the two guys ahead of him were 27 carries for 151 yards.
I'm just saying,
Worse.
free Kobe Martin. I think he's just. He intrigues me. I think he's done a nice job with what
Run,
he's been given.
run game. I guess I will say this: like run game is. I think it was good for Indiana to see the run. Like they'd had a couple quiet weeks on the ground, and you can forgive that at Iowa. You can forgive it at Oregon. And yes, it felt like Michigan State was kind of loading up, and maybe that's part of the reason why Mendoza was so good against Michigan State. But you know, I mean, you look at that run game. 4 different players, if you include the quarterbacks, with at least one explosive run. They averaged 5.6 yards per carry. They ran for 4 touchdowns. 3 different players had a rushing touchdown. If you include the quarterbacks, obviously 262 total yards. Like that. That was meant to be a bit of a difference maker for this team, and maybe that's a difference maker as much. Sorry, didn't mean to spit on you. That maybe that's a difference maker as much in games like this, where where the opposing team is doing something kind of extreme defensively, press coverage, double teaming both out. You know, both your top 2 receivers, that you can pivot to and just kind of rolling through them on the ground is very encouraging.
Well, I think one other point, I guess we've heard, we did a lot with Big Noon Kickoff in terms of getting availability and talking to their guys, and I watched this morning, and all the stuff was about how well coached this team is, and them trying to define what that means. Matt Leinart, Urban Meyer,
Brady Quinn.
giving examples of their fundamentals and all this. But I mean, I think what for me highlights it in the last couple of games we've seen, they've kind of, or Kirsten's hinted at. We talked about the one game last week. They've had to sort of pivot.
Mhm.
What they thought they would get to be able to do and thought how they dictate the game. Today, it seemed like the passing game they really thought, because this was a team, because I think part of why they thought they'd dominate the passing game, UCLA cannot get to the quarterback. There's 6 sacks this seasons. The protection was awesome for most of the game. So they thought we're just gonna be able to pick this team apart, and they weren't. Pivot, the rushing game kind of dominates, even though it was kind of dormant the last couple of weeks, and they win by 50. And so I think when you talk about well-coached teams, in-game adjustments, game plan adjustments, we've continually seen that from this group. Last week, Michigan State, the start didn't go well defensively. They lock them down for almost 3 quarters. We've just seen that. To me goes, from what all these guys are saying when they watch Indiana. To me, when we've watched all these games, that does stand out. That this coaching staff does just a really good job with in-game adjustments, shifting the game plan, and when somebody tries to take something away or they've never seen something before, it's okay, we'll just go to the next thing.
I think the only thing I would kind of just sort of add to that is, and I'm sure I'm not just hammering refresh on Twitter after the game, but last year Indiana had a handful of games like this. You think about the Nebraska game, you think about the Michigan State game, Michigan State, Purdue, obviously, and you tweet out the final score, and I would see people from either other reporters around the Big Ten or maybe sort of national facing reporters see the IU score and react to it and be like, wow, what's Kurt Signetti doing? This didn't even create a ripple. Yeah. I there was no, wow, look at Indiana. It was just oh yes, this has been normalized essentially here, that Indiana is capable of doing this. If you are not up for it, even in conference play, and I know UCLA's got all its issues, but if you are not up for it, even in conference play, this is what Indiana will do to you. And they will do that, as we've talked about many times. I think Fernando Mendoza might have attempted 5 passes in the second half. They will do that without really trying to put their foot on your throat. This is just a product of Indiana playing 4 quarters of football.
5 passes.
Not Indiana trying to.
He completed all 5 passes.
But you know what I mean? This is not Indiana trying to make a
Well, you think somebody talked about them, oh man, they really ran up the score against Illinois or something. And if you saw this, maybe you'd think, oh man, they really ran up. And it's well, no.
No, the backups ran into the game. They threw 5 passes in the second half. And they're it's not.
But Alberto.
That's fair. Yeah, they threw a few with Alberto Mendoza. But again, that was
But when you only have one running back that you're trying to run out the clock with, you don't want to make him carry it 15 times and risk. He's your kind of key backup. So they were simply just very vanilla, running out the clock, starting with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Just trying to get
maybe 8 minutes left in the third quarter.
The third quarter, sorry.
Yeah, maybe 8 minutes left in the first quarter.
Technically.
He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. This has been Mind Your Banners for Indiana 56, UCLA 6. Hoosiers are at Maryland next weekend. I'll be there. Mike didn't want to go to our nation's lovely capital. But
touching that one. I'll cover remotely and help out Zach any way I can.
Yeah, there may be more people in the press box than there will be in the stands. Who knows?
Wow.
No, that's not true. I guess it's homecoming, which seems a little harsh.
I think a story counting every fan in attendance who in their affiliation would be good. You should do that.
All right.
It's all red though, right?
Yeah, that's tough.
Standout.
Well,
you'll have to go around and
half Adidas, half Under Armour. At least we can check the logos.
Okay, you'll look for logos. All right.
All right. Anyway, let's get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you soon.